So welcome everybody. You're probably expecting Christine, but you've got me instead and your favorite Jim. But Christine is officially out on maternity leave. I know you've heard from her a good bit about that over the last couple of months. But we're pretty excited to have a new 90 baby in the family, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Did we get 90 onesies in the store?
Monica knows best, but they're on their way. They're in production, so we'll be sure to be getting one over to her.
That'll be great.
Yeah. But today's product office hours, we're going to be focusing on the departments and rolling out to additional teams within the organization. In terms of an agenda, we'll go through a quick introduction. You know Jim pretty well. And if there's any coaches
been here before, if they've been to these before, there's probably new people that have no idea what they're up against. So
true, possible. And then we'll basically go through the why and when to engage your departments and the rest of the teams in your organization, and really what that departmental rollout looks like, which typically will include both the weekly and the quarterly meetings. And then feel free to throw your issues and questions in the chat. We've got Stephen and Monica both on the line and capturing those. So they'll be throwing those into IDS for everybody, and we'll go through those towards the end. But just to give you kind of an objective for today, we're really hoping to just help you understand how to roll out 90 to your departments and set them up for those weekly and quarterly meetings. And thinking about everything from, not just a productivity standpoint, but really the cultural benefits too of really having everybody bought into one system and running on a platform like 90.
Brilliant.
Awesome. So I'm Michelle. I primarily work with all of our coaches and partners. I already recognize a lot of the names in the participants list today. I've been here for a while, so you may have seen me in Intercom back in the day, receiving chat messages, but more recently I've moved over to supporting all of our coaches, those EOS implementers, and anybody on the coaching side that wants to incorporate 90 into their practice. And then we've got Jim, our coaching expert.
Well, I appreciate the notion of the expert, but certainly I'm our loudest coach, maybe. But it's great. I'm super excited to talk about the departmental part of this, Michelle, because as we know, there's not a lot of guidance in any of the coaching systems that we support for getting past the leadership team. And so I get this all the time from my clients, and I know we get it from other people as well. So there's a lot of rich content here, and we've got some great experiences that I collected from not only from my own experience, but from other coaches and other clients as well.
Awesome. All right, so we'll just kind of jump into it here. Just thinking about like the when and why to engage the rest of your departments and the rest of your company. It really is all about aligning the organization. And like I mentioned, it's beyond just a productivity standpoint. It's really that cultural aspect of things, getting everybody kind of buying into the same system and running off of all of the same processes. And there is the notion that the leadership team is going to be the easiest audience, right? They generally have read all of the books, done most of the research. They're closer to the different systems.
Yeah, and that I created this graphic because I talk about it all the time. It's like the leadership team is the closest to the sun. So they get all of that, the warm glow of having a system and understanding exactly the intricacies of it and the context about why you make the choices you make in setting up the tools and how you roll them out. So it's doubly important to take special attention to every next team and to spend time with them. And so we've got a couple of webinars we've done here over the different aspects of that. But certainly, figuring out meetings. Michelle, we hear this all the time that once people start doing that weekly meeting and really start to feel the progress that really effective meeting starts happening for them, that's really when they start feeling that they're really taking advantage and they're really gaining a lot of clarity and focus and productivity out of the system. So getting that rolled out to everybody else is critically important, because rituals and artifacts, we say that culture is captured in rituals, artifacts, and language. And if everyone shares in those same rituals and artifacts, everyone gets better at it, and that's really the point. And job number one, we need to be leaders building leaders building leaders. That's my favorite way I've heard people talk about it. And this is the best way to give people that framework to focus on getting better and better at leading and managing and taking responsibility and being accountable. We know that works for the leadership team. You got to make sure everybody else gets access to it as well.
Absolutely.
So, foreshadowing, I have created a bunch of materials with all the stuff in it. So if you want access to the full deck and all the explanation materials, just put your email address in the chat to make sure we get it back out to you. Ask Steve. So Stephen, that's coming your way. Sorry about that, brother. It could be a couple hundred people asking, but so here's the thing. So we do have some specific guidance about when you begin this, and it's really all about, Michelle, it's about confidence, right? You can't start getting the rest of the organization to start trusting you that you're really doing this until you have confidence in the system. So typically you say, hey, wait until after our first leadership quarterly. So that way the leadership team's been through the implementation, they've gone through a quarterly. So you got to have a certain amount of just like going through the motions with the leadership team, whether you're self-implementing or working with a coach, you've gone through enough of it that you kind of really start to feel the impact of it and can represent that to everybody else. And that's really the key. And you have to have a command of the rituals, artifacts, and language, but also you have to then be willing to commit and see the value of having this go all the way through everybody else, because there's going to be some training has to be done, and it's ongoing training, Michelle. It's like, everything we talk about with leadership and management, you've got to help the people, in the departments start to grow as leaders as well. And part of that's going to just be contact time and spending time with them and helping them understand the context and also get better and better at doing it themselves. So without the guidance of having probably your most mature people around the leadership team, it's usually the way it is, right? And so these other people are going to need a little bit more support to really come along.
And Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think after the quarterly or by the first quarterly, they've done the core values speech, the proven process is all baked. So they've really wrapped their arms around what they're going to be passing down to the rest of the organization.
In theory, that would be the earliest they could possibly have that stuff done.
Okay.
So, quite often, what I'm looking for when a client asks me, hey, can we start talking about rolling this out to everybody else? It's really more about whether they've mastered that stuff. So if they really glommed down to their core values very quickly and they were able to do great work, that they delivered their first quarterly around, getting the core value speech really solid, then yeah, man, then we're ready. But if you're still tweaking with it quite a bit and you're still fumbling with language, those are the cues I'm looking for as to whether or not you're really ready to do it. That said, you could take a phased approach to this. So you could just say, hey, we're going to start just having everybody run, weekly meetings, and the meetings are going to be consistent like this, and everyone has to show up. And these are the, even before you've done all the implementation, just to get people into the notion that there's going to be some structure and some consistency coming. And you just really focus on the things that are really going to have value and people are going to have trust in. And, you won't be perfect. You'll make mistakes. It's okay.
Yeah.
So this is a slide, Michelle, from that broader deck that I put together that, walks people through the step-by-step process a little bit. And when we covered a couple of these things, like I said, in other events. So we had the 1-on-1 webinar, and we had the Cascading 90 webinar, really talk about that state of the company meeting, that first quarterly state of the company. And then what goes into manager training. And one of the things we'll distribute when we distribute all these materials is some of the deckware that we've got for manager training. But today we're going to really focus on those meetings and getting those things launched, and what goes well and what's hard, because the thing is, once you know it, you don't realize what other people don't know about it, and what we have to really cover and all of that. So that's what we're going to focus on today.
Great.
So, what department starts first? It's a great question, and I think it's really should be need-based. That's one of the ways we talk about phasing, Michelle, is that not all the departments are going to be as ready as other departments. Some departments are ready for or need it some departments are running fine and you don't want to necessarily fix that stuff that ain't broken. But, I think most companies have some sense of this is a department that really needs the structure. Maybe the leader's not quite as strong or as confident as they need to be. And this is a way of getting to that. And then, that's one of the great things about this is there is a path to take. There's something in the software leads you along. So even if you're not a really confident leader, if you just follow the path as it is, you're gonna feel more strong and more confident. And so quite often we say, every department, and I know we'll go look at this, Michelle, every department has their own set of meetings in the software for helping people get set up. So Foundation Day, that's the day we really start teaching all those foundational tools, all those basic tools that go into it, accountability chart, rocks. And it's a great structure for teaching the same thing to departments you would teach the leadership team. Because they got to learn all that stuff. They still benefit from all that learning, or a compressed version of that anyway, because they don't have to make brand new decisions. Quite often they're building off of what the leadership team's already done. And the vision and planning, the top part of the VTO is, as you know, Michelle, is consistent, right? It's the company's vision that we really start with. Core values, you're not going to have your own of those. Core focus or just cause, you're not going to have your own one of those. It's really when you get down to that 3-year, 1 year, and 90-day goals, every department gets to have their own of those, because and they should be supportive of what the leadership team is doing.
Yeah, and I think both of these really lead back to the culture aspect of this, bringing everyone into the fold, making sure everybody understands structure and how they're impacting the company goals and moving things forward, even if they're at the departmental level.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we see all the time. It's one of those standard, in EOS they call it by hitting the ceiling, but in other works, it's just one of those places where you get to, you're past those true believers in the business, and you're adding new people. We're like this at 90 right now, right? Where we're having to make extra work to make sure that everybody gets into the culture, can find the culture, can get, because they're starting out at Pluto. We got to bring them closer and closer into the closer sphere, so they're getting the warmth of the sun. And they see the value of it, and they know they're invited. But I had one client that I helped with this, and they'd gone now through 4 layers of management. They got 4 layers of management in the company. Leadership team is so bought in on their business operating system. They started with EOS years ago. They were really great at it. They've modified it to really fit their organization like a glove. And the next layer down, those guys are pretty on board. But you go 2 more tiers down where they don't have leadership abilities, or they don't have leadership responsibilities. They're right people, so they belong there and they want to buy into the culture, but they don't have a way of accessing it. And that's one of the things that the software helps with that. It creates that central place where all these things live. But you got to get them into the ritual of realigning against that. Like every quarter, checking against the VTO. Are we really on track to doing the things we said we're going to go do? Are we supporting the overall vision with what we're prioritizing? And having that go back and forth, where those things are cascading down from the leadership team to these other meetings. That's an important part of it. So there's all this connectivity you have to build, and the meetings are really the key ritual that goes behind it all. Should we go look at software?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So just thinking kind of like basic setup of adding your teams and your people into 90 and rolling out. It's really going to start with establishing those different teams in the system, which will be done through settings in the bottom left. That's an admin owner section here. But you'll just create the teams that you need for all of your departments. And think about too, you can have as many teams in here as you want. So of course, for your departmentals and all of your different teams, but you can also go beyond that for one-on-ones and same page. All of that can be generated here. But you'll build out your teams, and then you'll ultimately add all of the users that need access to that team. And chances are most of your users or your people already exist in the directory. They may not be people or users yet, but they live on the directory because they're likely already on your accountability chart. That's probably one of the first things you did was build out your directory, and load up your accountability chart. So from here, it's really easy to come through and just activate your team members. That'll basically allow you to assign them a role, put them on a team or more than one team, and that'll generate that invite email so that you can start running meetings with all of your departments.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's not great for us from a revenue perspective to talk about this, but you can actually create the teams and just have the manager in there as a way of starting this, by the way, until people get used to the tools and why they would use them. But it's so important for people to know that it doesn't cost you anything to go build a new team, to build at a department. So you have these really, the department should, will go along with the structure of accountability chart more than likely. But all of our clients, right, Michelle, that really embrace this have lots of different teams in there, project teams and just all those one-on-ones. It's a great way to just collect things and make sure that you've got stuff going on. I've got some people that I mentor that are outside the organization, but they're inside. I've got a one-to-one team with them just for doing that alone. And it's a great way to just keep track of, bring you right back to where you were. The software does a great job of maintaining context for you, and so you know exactly where you're at. So don't do as an experiment, my friends. Everyone, we're done today. Go create a team somewhere and just you can see what it feels like. It's crazy easy.
Yeah, and I think it's a great call. I mean, to your point, it's not necessarily a best practice to have one person on the team running the L10 for people that aren't users yet, but it is kind of a nice introduction to those people because maybe you're not fully running the L10 or the weekly meeting, but you're giving them kind of a taste of what's to come. If there's like deeper training that's going to happen before they're actually in 90 and executing things in the software, but it does work really nicely. And I do know there are several teams that operate that way. It's kind of a, the one person who feels the most confident can kind of lead, and then you'll slowly add your team members in as they're ready.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're just in that implementation stage where you're just going to go through that initial foundation, / focus day piece, or you're going to start working on vision elements with people. I mean, still, everything needs to have an assignment eventually. Everyone needs to be assigned. So you will eventually want to turn everybody on so they can fully integrate and connect with the software and with the overall system. But but you can actually, as you're going through this process and you don't want to freak people out by getting them access to something that they don't understand. Right. That's really what I'm saying, Michelle. It's like, some people are a little hesitant, like, oh, I'm going to add them, and they're just going to freak out that things are changing. Some people are afraid of change, Michelle. I don't understand, but it's true.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. And then the next thing you'll want to do is establish what that weekly agenda looks like. And something important to kind of call out here is that they can look different for all departments across the organization. So usually depending on size or, if there's extra areas that they need to cover, I guess I would encourage you to kind of be flexible when you build out the departmental weekly agendas. Jim, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the thing at the leadership team level, we talk about the weekly meeting as being specifically working on the business, not in the business, right? That's really the difference. And we talk about when we talk about 90, it's really a whole company tool set. So all the companies can use it, all members of the company can use it. And it's not really about doing the work, it's about working on the business. So when you go down deeper into the organization, especially starting with the department or the teams below that, then the balance between on the business, in the business shifts a little bit. And so almost everyone that I coach, when you get in like to the sales and marketing team, you're starting to include tools that give reporting specifically to that team, right? So you got your scorecard for that team. That's great. But if you're a sales team, you're probably going to go look at your Salesforce or whatever your CRM is. If you're at accounting, you're maybe going to bring in your list of aging accounts or something like that. Because the things where you might pull out an issue to talk about or to do that this team needs to take, all of those systems can be dropped into the meeting and just be part of that flow on a regular basis. And also, we do this course with our team, Michelle, that they having those monthly elements too, having a place where it's just a placeholder says, all right, go look at the monthly numbers now too. Go look at the quarterly numbers. Make sure that all those things are in there so you can So you're pulling out all the information you really want.
Absolutely. And it may just be a placeholder, or you can even kind of go one step further and embed another web page or URL or a Google Sheet. So to Jim's point, if you do have additional data that your team needs to drill down into each week, don't hesitate to add it. I wouldn't feel tied to any specific agenda. Really use 90 to work for you guys and have really productive meetings.
Yeah, I mean, the default meeting, even when you create a new department, is the full 90 minutes. And that's not, it's very common to shorten that meeting as you move further and further down the accountability chart. So this meeting would be short, because as you move down, people are going to have less kind of hairy issues to go deal with. So you still want to have those 5-minute or less blocks, which are just like checking in with stuff. Is anything there we need to pull out? Any issues? You're still going to have that process of like all the stuff that might create issues at the top there: data, rock review, headlines, to-do list. Any of those could become issues. So anything else that might become an issue or a source of issues, those other systems, some other thing you're going to check in on, put those at the top. Really short agenda, forcing you to like just go through it, on track, off track, and things that are off track fall down to that issue solving part of the meeting. But it shouldn't be any longer than it needs to be. It's better to give people more of their day back. And of course, if you get to the end of your list, Michelle, you give everyone the rest of the time back. You never make a meeting longer than it has to be. But what we find is, as a best practice, these meetings are run shorter as you get further down the organization. And it's amazing. It feels so productive. If you follow this consistent agenda and you have this, everyone knows exactly what's going to happen in that meeting. They know there's no place to hide, but they also know that they're going to have a chance to ask the questions or make things happen as they need to. So shorter meetings, more stuff in them as you move down the organization.
Absolutely. And one thing to also call out here on the departmental weeklies is you do have the opportunity to send your issues up and down, right? So if you're working on an issue in the departmental and you really need the leadership team to weigh in or approve something, you do have that send issue to another team feature.
Let's show that. Let's bring up an issue.
Yeah.
So every team gets their own issues list, their own meeting agendas, their own to-dos, their own rocks, right? So this is a test issue. Let's go ahead. We just put it on the.
Oh, I'm not on this team. Well, that's a problem. I guess I'll change the owner.
That's all right. There you go. So here, as you get to it, this happens quite a bit when teams start to really trust each other and everyone knows that, hey, we're all trying to solve issues. If you're in a department and this really needs to go to the leadership team for approval, you take all those notes so they know what to do with it, but then you can push it to the leadership team. And it's going to land there in a special section that makes it clear this is coming from somewhere else. This is the team that needs it, and then they can push it back. Then they can push it back.
And you can exactly, and you can maintain visibility here too. So if they've put some notes and comments, but maybe they're still IDSing on it, you can always see exactly what's going on. But then, like Jim said, it'll show up at the top of your list that they've sent it back, and they'll have some resolution or some guidance in there for you.
And once again, creating that kind of connectivity between the various departments and the leadership team, is so crucial to maintain as you grow.
Exactly.
Let's go look at a quarterly meeting. So just like we do in, we're implementing EOS into a new customer, when you're implementing 90, you probably will start with those weekly meetings. That's probably the first place you go. And that's where people start to feel the forward progress that they and the connectivity they want. But eventually you're going to have the team take on rocks. I think we talk about rocks in other meetings. But certainly even departments should run quarterlies, just like with the weekly meeting. It don't have to be as long as the full day session that the senior leadership team takes. They can be shorter, but they're going to follow the same basic agenda. But you can customize that agenda here, just like you do for the weekly meetings. And as you're setting your departments up, you should probably think through this. just like with the leadership team, you probably want them to do a check-in. How's the quarter going? And that's because that's a source for issues, right, Michelle?
Mhm.
And you want to review the last quarter, and that, gosh, I mean, both the check-in and the review last quarter, Michelle, those always go longer with my teams. I don't know if maybe I'm doing it wrong, maybe I'm doing it more right. But either way, rationalize that. Think about what you really want to have in there and train against it. So this is what it looks like to review the quarter. Because typically, Michelle, we're talking about where we got to with our rocks, not just you get them done, but trying to digest what we learned in the rock. And I think that's great. That's great stuff. So and sometimes it takes more than 30 minutes. We take a lot of rocks.
Yeah.
So there's that part. And then reviewing the VTO, the thing that's different about the department quarterly is there's part of the VTO you can't do anything about, but certainly you can make sure that, one of the things I see really common, Michelle, is like, hey, when we ask the question about the core values, the questions we ask are these still our core values? Do they still represent our culture? Are they still written in a way that we can we say within this organization? And then, are we hiring, firing, reviewing, and rewarding against these core values, right? And every department can do more to align with those core values.
Mhm.
So you can't change them as a department, but you can suggest changes, you can ask questions, or you can just say, hey, make that an issue. We need to make sure that we're really doing more about aligning to that core value within the team.
Absolutely. And maybe this is a good time to call out sort of the cadence of when the leadership team has their quarterly versus state of the company versus a departmental quarterly, if you want to add some color there.
Yeah, and I think we have a slide later on that gives a picture of it. But
Oh yeah.
The leadership team will have their quarterly, and then as soon as they can get their act together, they're going to do a state of the company meeting that talks about, hey, this is how we did last quarter. This is how we did against our rocks. Those were our priorities for the quarter, and this is how we did against them. We gave ourselves a score as to how we did on it. There we go. On those things, and reporting back to everybody. And then here are the new rocks. Here's our new priorities for this next 90 days. So somewhat after, so they have that quarterly, they're all going to get their rocks smart. And then we'll come back at the state of the company and say, this is what we're going to try to accomplish as a leadership team in the next 90 days. And then we receive that as departments, and then we have our department quarterly and set our priorities in support of those. Because the source of, as we're going through that agenda in the quarterly for the departments, you want to make sure you're reviewing all of the things that might generate issues and that might become rocks. So all those rock candidates, you want to capture all of those. That includes your 3-year picture, your 1-year plan for the department, the company 3-year picture and 1-year plan, the company's rocks for the quarter. Because this is that we've said, these are the most important things for us to do. Hey, as a department, we know we need to do this if that's going to work, right? And that's so you got to participate in that. And then and all those become part of the fodder for figuring out how you're going to allocate your rock completion resources within the team. One of the things that I think that, Michelle, we talk about that at the leadership team level, that 80% of your time goes to your roles, responsibilities, and the accountability chart, and 20% is your rock time. That's 1 day a week is rock time if you're at the leadership team level. You're going to figure that out when you go further down. I mean, you can start with that as a guide, but quite often as you go further and further down the organization, the rock portion of people's schedules gets shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You might get to 5%, and then at the very bottom of the accountability chart, people that are just executing on tasks every day, they're probably not going to have rocks. Right? Mm-hmm. So 0% of their time is spent on rocks. All their time is spent on roles and responsibilities. And then when someone's ready to start taking a leadership role, first thing you might do is give them a rock and see how they do.
Yeah, or at that level, they may own a lot of milestones across rocks, but maybe they don't have a rock themselves.
Yeah. As we talked about with rocks all the time, it's like owning a rock is not about doing all the work. It's about making sure it gets done and reporting back when it's off track.
Yeah, that's a great call.
Good.
Meetings or?
Yeah, let's go back to the meetings in the software. So there's this natural place within the typical quarterly called the EOS tools, the toolbox, where we would go and review other things we might want to implement within a leadership team, you can decide how to handle that within all of the stuff here. I mean, we have a checkbox that we can go through to tell you whether you've actually taught those tools. And here's the two things I'll say about that, Michelle. One, you probably want to have a shorter meeting for your department. So you're probably not going to have, all this much time. So you're going to have to reapportion your whatever it is. I know we used to do when it was just you and I on the coach team, we did like a 2-hour quarterly, and now we've got a team behind us. So we did like 4 hours this last time and still ran out of time. So,
Right.
So as the team gets bigger and we take on more, we're going to expand the amount of time. But this time can be used either as apply it somewhere else, or you might have a team that needs to learn some of these things. Like I love to teach my teams about taking breaks, the clarity break notion, that idea of I need to have some time where I stop working diligently inside the business, I step back and get clarity on what's most important right now, what's most urgent and important. Especially when I'm frustrated or I feel like I'm spinning my wheels, take a break, think about it, reset, come back to it. And so every team can obviously benefit from that. Anyone where there's leadership, teaching them more about LMA and spending some time on that. You're supposed to apply these tools as needed to leadership teams. So in the departments, in the same way, there's lots of learning to go into here. You've had a team that failed at their rocks last quarter. Let's go reteach rocks. Right? But this is not, and this isn't the only things we might consider. This is just the EOS toolbox. But knowing that there's a time we typically spend every quarter for professional development within that team and applying what's most important right there. But you have to give it some thought. So just like we do it for the leadership team quarterly and the leadership team annual, you're going to spend some time, if you're the leader of that team, thinking about what's the best thing for this team, because you are the primary coach for that team, and you have to spend some time thinking about what's going to advance this team the best. What's the best use of time here, so we feel like we're moving forward.
Yeah, and I love the clarity break call out at the departmental level, because it really is so easy to get stuck in like just tasks and checking things off, and taking the time to really like sit back and kind of zoom out and look at things kind of at a higher level is so important, and taking the time is critical.
Absolutely. The other one I like to call out is delegate and elevate. Michelle, how many times have you and I done that together? Because we keep getting team members, so we have to go back and do it again. Like, okay, we're clearly running out of time. Let's figure out where to apply people. So, So, and just to remind everybody, I mean, just go down to rocks. The source for rock candidates is still those long-term issues, right? That's where we typically would spend our time. Just like with the leadership team quarterly, the department quarterlies follow the same process, where we're going to show you your long-term issues, and you get a chance to think about which ones are really rock candidates and turn them into rocks, just like you would in the normal process. So everything is really it's the same process, same ritual. So as a leadership team member, if you get good at this with your leadership team, you should be pretty good at teaching your department how to do it as well. And it gets the same level of clarity, same process for solving issues when you get down to the IDS section. All right.
I don't know if we need to go to IDS.
Yeah. So let's go back to the deck here. So it's actually let's look at the implementation slides. I'm sorry, the implementation meeting pieces. Just gives people a sense of that. So if you've been running EOS, or if you got coached through whatever your business operation is by a coach, you may not even be aware that there are these meeting types that are all about setting up the tools. So let's get out of this meeting and go do a like a vision day.
Oh, gotcha.
So all of these, all of these meeting types are already in there. So the focus day has all of those foundational tools in it. So it help people, and even if you're just teaching the stuff, it's a great way to make sure you cover all the stuff, because it brings the right tool into to play as you're doing it, right, Michelle? I mean, I think even you might as well go ahead and give it a start and show people how it works. But you can see here that You do some teaching up that, but you can probably turn off hitting the ceiling, or you could talk about it a little bit. You could talk about the things like, hey, these are the leadership abilities that we want everyone to develop. And then it goes right to the accountability chart and it brings it up. And how much time are you going to spend on it in your department as you're rolling it out to people? As you'll see in the materials, Michelle, I do this with all of our new people. This is the same materials that I've published to everybody else, the ones that we use. We go through and I ask all of our members of our team that are new, hey, let's look at your roles and responsibilities. Do you understand this role and responsibility? Do you know how it's measured? Do you have measurables associated with that? Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they're not quite sure. Well, that's how we turn expectations into agreements. It's here, you think you know what it means. Your person you're reporting to probably has their thought about what it means. Let's put some measurables around it and some processes around it, so we're really certain exactly what executing this looks like. And then helping everybody kind of like connect to it that way, because this is a real living document. This really matters. If you don't understand any of these points, you got to bring it up to somebody. Because I think we always build these things out, Michelle, at the leadership team level, but as we move down, sometimes people the lower levels of the accountability chart often have really soft roles and responsibilities, and hardening them up so everyone is really clear is super important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then there's a chance to talk about rocks and looking at the rocks, and it'll bring up, you can look at the rocks that the leadership team has usually as guidance for ways to think about how to build your rocks out. What is your internal standard for what a smart rock looks like? How many milestones have you set up? How specific are you around being specific, measurable, attainable, and so on and so forth. And so that everybody can follow along with that stuff. So it really becomes a guide for how you teach these things as well.
Yep.
And let's go look at really quickly. The one thing I didn't want to cover in here, Michelle, is that when we're teaching vision, this one's actually got a little teaching guide in it. So pretty handy. Look at the scorecard, and then also the meeting pulse has stuff in there.
Yeah, just walking through all the.
Yeah, it just walks. This is your chance to kind of teach the elements of that meeting, because you will get people adopting your business operating system so fast if you get them to start executing that weekly meeting pulse, right, Michelle? I mean, we found that again and again. Once people start getting into that flow, it's like the value of this is incontrovertible.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Well, let's go look at one of the vision meetings. I just want to show, as you're doing that, the one thing it's different about departments. It's not true of projects. So you can create projects or departments, but projects don't have any VTO elements, right? Right, Michelle?
Yeah. Okay.
But a department or a team does have, to get down to looking at like, this is VB1. So like you could look at core values, you could teach core values in the VB1, but you can't change core values at the department level, right? Right. So you're like, you guys teach them about them. And this is a place where I also spend time, Michelle, is like, I cried the other day during my meeting, talking about how I relate to the core values and making sure everyone understands what they mean, and like asking everybody for them to, what's the core value you really relate to that really excited you. And everybody had a great story. Everybody had a great. I love being here because I love inquisitive. I love being here because I really love GSSD. And then him talking about our core focus, and letting everyone know that this is the thing that we will. This is our just cause. This is what we will make sacrifices for if we believe in this. But you can see it has leadership on it, so you can't make changes. However, when it comes to the go-to-market, as a department, you can have your own go-to-market. But more importantly, everybody in the organization, every department should have their own 3-year picture and 1-year plan. Yep. And that's the one. As you're teaching, if you're teaching a department, it's great to allocate some time, a good hour and a half, to put together the 3-year picture, and then the 1-year plan, and really teach it. Really teach what we're doing here and why that has to add up to our 10-year target together. 3 years is 3 short years. What are the things that have to be in place for us to get to our 10-year target? And then that 1 year, what we need to accomplish this year to be on track to get to our 3-year, to be on track to get to our 10-year. And all of those things are custom elements that you can make for the department that should support what's going on, because you can, from the VTO, go over to the leadership team one, right, Michelle?
Yeah, it depends on if the leadership team is sharing the VTO or not.
Okay, fair enough. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, in this instance, they're not, but
Got it. Got it.
there
Okay,
would be a little toggle right here. So that's an option that all of our companies have.
got it. But having that planning aspect of like, to what we understand, what do we have to do accomplish the next 3 years? Because that becomes an input then to the leadership team when they go back and set their next 3-year picture. Like, oh, this department says they needed that. Okay, let's see how we do that. And then it's a great point of discussion. All right, let's head back to the deck, see what we got going on. Did we miss anything? We customize meeting agendas, add a new section.
You can add in other web pages, anything that you need to
So I
address.
see a lot of stuff in here. I already talked about Salesforce, and of course we have HubSpot injected into ours.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of coaches put in the drawing mechanism. So if you're having remote meetings, you can put any of the remote whiteboarding software into the meeting. What are some other stuff you've seen in there, Michelle?
Google Sheets, anything in the Google Suite works really well. So if you've got, and maybe you don't have it every time, but maybe once a month or something, you're reviewing a pivot table or something in a Google Sheet, you can embed that into the agenda as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. All right. And we didn't talk about the weekly meeting having multiple join. That's a great new feature that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, that one right now works just at the weekly meeting, but will soon work for all of your meeting types like the quarterly. So that's something we're prioritizing early this year. But when we send out our follow-up, we'll include a link to the product office hours that was run last week, I believe last Friday, after the feature was released. So everybody can check that out. Christine does a great job of showing you what it looks like from the presenter view versus what it looks like from an attendee view. So be sure to check that out.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're like most of us, you're running some remote meetings, that's a great way to help interact more with the software. So you're not being a passive watcher of the meeting. You can actually, as you're thinking about it, create a to-do for yourself or create an issue for yourself in the meeting. It shows up in the right spot. You don't have to refresh pages for things. And it's really helps you feel more connected.
Yeah, and it's also a nice sort of learning tool as well, right? Like the person who is most confident in the software will be the presenter for the weekly meeting, but the rest of the team can kind of be in the background, adding in items as you go, editing things, and kind of getting more familiar with the system.
All right. Well, cool. So we did it, Michelle. We talked about the meeting types. I mean, hopefully this is like a help towards this stuff. We've got a lot of, go ahead and hit this next one. I think so. As a reminder, everybody, we've got materials out there for the 7 parts that we think about rolling this out. You've got, we've already given you the Cascading 90 webinar with, we talked about the state of the company and what goes into that, and about developing some manager training. All the managers should learn about this stuff. But the point of that is so they can start running their weekly meetings and their quarterly meetings with their teams and start developing rocks and things like that. And that's really, you got to get to that place. Michelle, we talk about it from the very beginning with EOS, with mission, vision, traction, healthy. We talk about eventually you see everywhere you go, everyone clear on the vision, executing against the plan. It's like, that's where you got to get there. That's the promise. That's the whole point. And then the quarterly reviews. Gosh, Michelle, I think this is a really great function. If you're not using this already, you should really take a look at it.
Yes,
because they've done a great job putting this together and helping people understand. Everyone in the company, it's part of this, gets to see how they align against the values, against their daily work, because we're collecting data, Michelle, every day inside of 90. So you really get a great data oriented view of how you did this quarter. so you can talk about it.
Yeah, and that opportunity to give and receive feedback. It's scheduled every quarter, you know it's coming. So it allows everybody to consistently meet and be open and honest with each other and have that dedicated time.
Yeah. So yeah, so and the last, the internal coach, we haven't talked about that yet. That's in my materials, a little bit of guidance on that. So look forward to that. I think we have another listing of all the resources here.
Yep.
And I know we can drop some of those into the chat, but those webinars are out there. Like I said, request access, and I'll start sharing stuff out here shortly for people to get access to that, the rest of the materials, because good fun stuff.
Yeah, and then just from like an onboarding and training perspective too, as you're rolling out to additional teams in your organization, don't ever feel like you have to go at it on your own. Send that new team to our CS team for the full onboarding and training that the leadership team may have gotten at the beginning. That's free forever, ongoing. It can be one-on-one trainings, your entire department.
Let's go over the software and show everybody where that's at. That's right. We should make a bigger deal of that because it's really pretty cool. We will train your team. You don't have to do it. We'll train your team.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just right through the chat, you can schedule team trainings with our CS team. And that's, again, going to be that top to bottom training. It can be one-on-one if you have somebody who's really going to be taking over quarterly conversations for the department. Maybe they have a deeper one-on-one around that particular tool. But just keep in mind that we're always here for training and support. You never have to think that you're the sole trainer for the entire organization. You can continue to send them to our team. And along those same lines, the data upload is available for all of your teams throughout the organization as well. So even if your team isn't actively on 90, but maybe they have a scorecard that they've been maintaining, or they're compiling some long-term issues in an old spreadsheet or something, we can do all that upload too. So just throw things in the chat here. It'll go directly to our client success team, or schedule that training right through the chat as well.
Yeah, and they're amazing. That's why I'm here. That's totally why I'm here, because they're so awesome.
They are.
Yeah, that's you, Monica. I know you're in there somewhere. All right. Well, great. So do we have any, Stephen, how are we doing with issues? We have things we got to talk about?
Few that I tagged on there for you that were pretty good.
Nice. Let's put this in regular list. All right. Just a couple. So rolling out 90 to lower levels. We've rolled out 90 to our leadership team and 1 to 2 other mid-management levels. How to address lower levels, such as production workers that probably do not need a weekly 90-minute meeting.
Yeah, they sure don't need 90 minutes, Michelle. Here's what, but what you do want to create is an opportunity to collect the issues that they face. All right. Mm-hmm. So the one thing that's not part of EOS Purity that I know I've used for many years, I know, Michelle, you and I use it, is that daily stand-up. And that we see this a lot with production teams of, where it's just daily workers, and where their visibility is about getting work done today. So if you follow that stand-up, that Scrum methodology, where everyone has to just answer the question, what did you get done yesterday? What are you gonna do today? What gets in the way? And so give you that chance for people to say, yeah, I got a problem with this. And now we're going to tease out those issues to go solve. It's still valuable to maybe take a longer meeting once a week and just make sure you're asking those questions, looking at their numbers, because everyone all the way down the company should have measurables. That's how they feel like they're accomplishing their goals. Like they know exactly, hey, you're supposed to put out this kind of numbers every week. That's what winning looks like. So they can say, yep, I'm winning, not winning. And if they're not winning, hey, here's what the issue is. And so you still want to have that chance to tease issues out of every part of the organization. So you're going to look at measurables. They're not going to have rocks. You're going to want a chance to cascade messages to and from. So those are things, cultural elements like, hey, big news about a customer, big news from other parts of the organization, like, oh, Billy Bob over in the warehouse just ran a marathon. Big shout out to Billy Bob. You want those things to happen as much as possible. So it becomes a way of enabling those kinds of communications in a standard, consistent way. people can know they can bring things as well and cascade them up and down, and it makes sense. But the real biggest thing, I think, Michelle, is make sure we're capturing issues, and maybe you'll do some IDS with them. But gosh, man, you got to make sure you're teasing all those issues out, because if you're not getting issues out of your lowest level people right now, you're just not getting them. They're there. I promise you they're there. So yeah, I mean, I saw the question about no rocks for those people. Listen, what my guidance for my clients, Michelle, is always that if you've got people working for you, you should have rocks or a rock. There's always something you can do to make the team work better, to advance the team. If, you know, whether it's just advancing the team or really aligning with the company rocks in some way. If you're, you know, like let's look at all the different types of businesses that are out there. If you're a manufacturer and you're talking about someone that just, you know, does this, and it doesn't really, may not be an opportunity for them to take rocks. But if you're trying to mature them into a leader in some way, then yeah, you want to give them a rock. That's how they start to participate in the organization, as in building new things and creating new things. But it's not fair when you're paying somebody, you know, starting wages, to also give them some sense of like they got to manage their time and step away, because rock time is about managing your own time. So if they're not really managing their own time, they're definitely not, that rock thing is not going to work for them. And if they don't have the kind of visibility of the organization, I mean, it's not a capability question, it's a visibility question. If they're not in a place in the organization where they can see how to make things better, which is not uncommon for people at the bottom tier of your accountability chart, then they're not going to be in a great position to know what rocks to go work on. So I think, Michelle, quite often this gets down into the difference between your standard work and rocks. And there is no perfect answer, by the way. But that's typically how I teach it. And then let's, you know, if you've got a specific issue, let's talk about it. But I think that's how I talk about it.
Yeah, and maybe this is one of those areas where you just start and it's not perfect, and the manager is the one that's a user in 90 and the rest of the team are observers, so that they can see the issues on the list and participate. But the manager is the one that's kind of leading the weekly meeting and just getting them familiar with the concepts and the tools. And maybe slowly over time, you do start to assign rocks and bring people into the platform. And then on the other side, we are getting ready to launch a light user that might be a perfect option for these lower tier employees that really don't need full access to the system, but do need, you know, engagement to have quarterly conversations and feedback and be included there, but don't necessarily need the full system.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, amongst things I know we're working on there is like not having an email address to log in and things like that.
Right.
I think it is a real issue that we faced with some of our clients, and they're not going to take rocks. But they want to be able to take to-dos, and they want to be able to participate in meetings, and they want to be able to see cascading messages, and they want to have those quarterly conversations. I mean, this becomes that part of the sinew that connects parts of the organization. So it's important to give them connectivity into what everyone else has. You don't want to leave them out. Don't make them be Pluto. Bring them closer.
Right.
Ours, mate.
Yeah.
Great, but good question. Thank you very much for that.
Next
Let
one.
Let us know if you're not solved, by the way, if you've got more questions about that.
Yeah, definitely. Next one is best practices for when someone leaves. When there's changes within the business, items can they be previously assigned? Best practice to change ownership and then delete the account. That would definitely be my recommendation. Reassign their content to another user, and then you can deactivate them or completely delete them from the people directory, and that will basically revoke their access.
Yeah, I mean, the content sticks around even if you just revoke them, right? I mean, the content doesn't go anywhere. Just like it says, you know, person no longer here.
Right.
But it's a, just like you would, you know, in EOS purity, there's this notion of the reverse accountability chart. So accountability chart's all about growth over time. You're looking 6 to 9 months out. What's your organization have to look like? But this notion of as I'm starting to lose people, how do I reassign the roles, responsibilities? And so I would actually, when someone leaves, unless you're right away filling that spot, you want to think about those roles, responsibilities, where those are going to go. And then that will help you be really clear about where to assign the to-dos and the rocks and everything else that person might own. But it's a part of the natural flow of things, right, Michelle?
Yeah. And related to the accountability chart too, there is a way to attach files to accountability chart sheets. And I get that question a lot, like, what do people normally use that for? And generally that's used for a seat description or a role description so that everyone in the organization knows if the seat is open, or you're trying to fill something, they know exactly what you're looking for.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Rocks for teams with repetitive tasks. How do you have rocks for department if a very repetitive function?
Okay, well, so this is really about that that notion of the standard work versus the rock work. And guys, this can be very challenging as you get further and further down the organization to keep track of those things. There should be standard work, and as we get further down the accountability chart, more than likely the standard work takes up a bigger and bigger part of your day. If your job is ice cream scooper, then you're just going to scoop ice cream all day. Maybe that's really as much visibility into what the organization does as you have. Or maybe it's, there's hey, can you find a better way to keep the ice cream scooper clean? Oh yeah, so I can work on that. But if they're really, what they're trying to get them to do is a highly repetitive task, and that is the best structure for your organization, then that person does not get rocks. If you're, like, with ice cream scoopers, more than likely that's a high turnover job. They're off school for a couple of weeks. They're going to scoop ice cream and they're going to go back to school. Not going to try to develop them as leaders. Don't give them rocks. But if you're trying to develop them as leaders, you might want to restructure things. So, because hey, this is a job that's repetitive right now. But the people that are in this seat, I want to be able to mature them into leading a team at some point. So you'd want to think about what are the kinds of rocks would go in there, and then one, they have to have time to go do it, and they have to have visibility to knowing what those rocks should be, and probably some guidance on building it, and then really the coaching along the process to get the rock done. Because quite often, Michelle, we know this, people when they first take on rocks, there's a lot of failure. Even leadership teams aren't used to setting aside the time, and that's why we build out, if you go back and look at our rocks webinar, we talk a lot about all the things we need to do to get to better and better at doing our rocks. As you get further down the organization, it's just much harder. These people, people further down the organization may not be good enough at project management or time management to be great at it. But if you want them to learn, you got to coach them.
Yeah, and that actually makes me think of having those standard departmental rocks too. So as you bring on new members to the department, having a very specific onboarding rock that's maybe company-wide, but also a departmental onboarding rock that helps somebody come up to speed. It's kind of like a freebie rock. They're more than likely to get that one done. They're going to check off all their milestones and really learn the concepts over the first quarter and just kind of come up to speed, and then feel more confident taking on a rock the following quarter.
That's a great call out, Michelle, because that's exactly right. You should have some standard rocks that everybody executes as part of their onboarding. It's a great way to make sure they do all the onboarding stuff, and they've got some coaching along the way to getting it done. Because then it's a softer step up to get to the place where here's an outcome, a smart outcome that we want you to get to, and I'm going to help you build out the milestones for that. But that if it's the first time you're taking a rock after your onboarding rock, and you've not been a manager before, it's worth hand holding. You're going to be there to help build that rock with them. Michelle, I've seen you do it. You've helped, to your team members build the rock. Like, they've never done this before. So yeah, you're going to spend time with them to go make that happen, but don't bother with it if it's not someone that's going to stick around for a while. Right. Because it's, it's part of how we think about the structure of our business as you move. Hey, is this role, what's the time span capability set around this role? Are they really thinking about how many scoops of ice cream today, or are they talking about how to make our ice cream scooping function more efficient and effective? And there's no right answer. There's no EOS heaven. You gotta run a better business, but it's the right framework to ask the question.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. It's something I'll remember myself is rocks are for developing leaders. So unless that's the future of that seat, then they really, I think that's a great takeaway.
Cool. Thank you. So, Stephen, I know we had another one come in. I saw it in the chat. They're like, oh, we'll help Jim talk about that.
Yeah, let's see. I think we lost Stephen actually, unless he's in the,
No,
Okay.
he had to go to a meeting he had or something.
oh, okay.
So we're making this a full-length movie. That's the problem. I'm talking to him.
So sharing rocks from the leadership team. Is there a way to share a rock from the leadership team with the department? Some rocks are worked on by multiple departments. Great question. Yeah. So I'll go over to rocks and show you exactly how that works. So you will need to share from the original team. So if you need a rock to be cascaded down to other teams, the team that primarily owns the rock needs to be the one to make those changes. But here, looking at this departmental rock, let me go to leadership team. You do have the ability to share your rocks to other teams, and you can do that to as many as you need. So exactly what you're thinking, you know, if you have a leadership team rock, but it's very marketing focused and the entire marketing team is going to be contributing in terms of milestones, then absolutely you want to give visibility to that team. So you've got this option right here. It will only show up if you have multiple teams. So if you're in your 90 account right now and you only have a leadership team, you're not going to see this. But as soon as you add additional teams, you'll have the ability to add your rocks across the organization. So you'll just drop them down to whatever teams you need to, and then they'll show up in those teams' rock page, and it will show you that it's the original team as leadership and that it's shared with you. But you'll have visibility into all of the milestones, all of the description, comments, everything. It's essentially just syncing to additional departments.
Yeah, and it's a great function to talk about, to keep because remember the reason that the rocks show up in that, the reason you want to do this obviously is the weekly meeting and having the chance to ask the question, is everything okay? You know, Michelle, I tell the story all the time about with doctors. You go to see the doctor and you'll have a great conversation with the doctor, and the doctor turns and says, well, thanks very much. And the doctor touches the doorknob.
It's also when you put your kids to bed, they're all good until you touch the door and they're like, wait.
Wait, one more last thing.
It's
Absolutely right. Absolutely. But any general practitioner, you go ask them about the doorknob questions, because that's really ends up, you need that opportunity for people to pipe in and say, oh, by the way, this, right? That's why we wanted to show up in all those weekly meetings, is so people say, yeah, by the way, this, because because we want to capture those issues. We want to make sure we got visibility of all that. So, and then more than likely, and we see it places all the time, you know, when you build out that rock, it's a company rock, but the people that own all the milestones might be all over the organization. So you kind of want it to show up in all those places so you can help track that and see, and everyone can see where it fits in. So you can say, hey, here's somebody, they don't have their own rocks this quarter, but they're helping out with 18 other rocks or whatever it is. So it's a great way to use all of that connectivity throughout the organization. Good question.
Yeah, that was a good one. Oops, good issues.
Yeah, let me know if you're not solved on that, but that's a great way to make sure everyone knows what's going on.
Oh, sorry, wrong team. Gosh, it's like that is a lot.
Wait a minute, what just happened?
Yeah. So just remember, if you are sharing from leadership team, to do it from the leadership team rock so that you can then share it to other teams.
Yeah, one little nuance on that, but that's, you know, more than likely if it's your rock and you're the one doing it, it'll work from my 90 as well.
Yeah, good call. Rock percentage completion rate. Is it possible to get a percentage completion rate on rocks based on how many milestones were completed?
No. Here's so this is what I teach, and if different coaches have a different approach to this, but what I teach is build your rocks for completion, right? Make them achievable in the quarter, because it's going to be so much more important for you to learn what can get accomplished in a quarter than it is to say, oh, we got 60% of the rock done. Oh, woohoo, right? We got most of the way to the moon. I think it's hard to track, and it's hard to know whether you really made progress or not. And here's one of the reasons why. I ask my clients all the time, and we do this with Inside 90 as well, give me a rock structure. What can you get accomplished by our next quarterly? because that's going to be our next check-in day. Because if there's a second, it's a phase 2 and a phase 3 and a phase 4 of this rock, that's fine. But it happens all the time, Michelle, where we get through the first phase of this rock and we go, you know what? It's not as important anymore. Or the scope's going to change dramatically. Or, oh, let's wait a quarter before we go back into this. And that's the break point you want to put in there. You know, I teach my clients about, you know, the notion of a phased rock and the notion of, hey, you know, there's a common structure where you might do an R&D rock and then a design rock and then an operational rock. And the R&D rock is determining whether this is really a thing or not. The design rock is trying to get to that minimum viable product. And then the operational rock is taking the minimal viable product and trying to operationalize it. And then it becomes one of your processes. In the you know, and that takes 3 quarters to get through, but chances are it's as fast as you're going to go anyway. And you've got a chance to decide between them. Is this really where we want to go? Or are we spinning our wheels? So my guidance would be, so at this point, you do get milestones become to-dos. So you do get a percentage completion on to-dos, but we don't ever look at rocks in terms of, hey, I had 2 rocks, they were both 50% done, so I actually got one rock done.
Right, doesn't count.
And I would encourage you not to think that way. It's not good. It's better. It's, you know, I know it's a PMP thing. I'm a PMP. I get it. But it's better to design your rocks in phases and plan for completion at the end of the quarter. That'd be my guidance. After thousands of rocks that I've helped put together, I promise you it's better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's something that Jim has brought to our department just in the last couple of quarters as we've added additional team members. And it's been so helpful because it's easy to get caught up in not knowing what the end product is or feeling like you have to pivot and then feeling like there's no way you can get the rock done because now that you've done all the research, everything has changed. So by establishing that first rock as just the research phase, basically means no matter what, you're going to be able to get it done. You know, no matter what the research looks like, you may decide that you're not going to continue with that exact plan, but you've done everything you could to get to that point.
And you can keep going. If there's a follow-on rock and there's more stuff to do and you're done with the first stuff, there's nothing, you know, gold star if you just keep working on it, you know, but design your rocks so that you can, because here's the thing, you want to start getting good at predicting what you can get done within that period of time. That's the magic, is being able to say, yeah, I can take on that rock and that rock because I know what they're going to be. I can start planning them out. That's why we talk about milestones, because it's so important to start getting the scope really figured out in your head before you commit to the team. Yeah, this is what done looks like. So if you build out milestones, work from the back, work from the front, back and forth to the point where like, okay, wait a minute, I can only get to here because I got one team that they say, uh-oh, there's a legal review step in there. Okay, that's where the rock ends. Because we never know how long a legal review is going to take. So we only promise to get to that point. You can build out the rest of the stuff for the follow-on rock, and if you get it done, you get it done. Amen. You know. So cool. So sorry, I don't know whose question that was. I'm sorry if I you know, I don't mean to be mean, but don't do that. Don't.
It's that attainable part, right? Making it smart.
Attainable part. That's right. That's right.
Who attends departmental level meetings? Should the integrator attend weekly, quarterly on a regular basis to monitor, provide feedback and guidance, or answer questions?
It's a great question. So, you know, we didn't talk about this today, but, you know, the 7 parts of my rollout package, we talk about that internal coach. And that's really what the internal coach is going to own, is figuring out when people are running good enough meetings that you don't need to have anybody in there. The integrator is a great person as you're first establishing it. Hey, let's go spend some time with everybody and make sure they're all really clear. So it's great to have the integrator as a trainer in these things, but that's the lowest value part of my job as a coach. So, you know, when we talk about my coaching role as I'm a teacher, I'm a facilitator, and a coach all at the same time, right? So the facilitator part is really the lowest value, right? But it's just making sure we get you know, valuable meetings. The teacher part, I've been there a bunch and I've got materials and I come up with great ways of teaching people things. That's a little bit of magic sauce. And then, but the coaching part is about having visibility for how someone else can be successful, right? And internally, eventually somebody has to really own your business operating system and own making sure that people are following it well and are have somewhere to go with questions. So eventually having that role, if you're working with a coach, like all my clients know they can call me anytime or send me questions anytime and they get time on my schedule, help first anytime, because I want them to be successful at this stuff. But eventually you want to develop that internal subject matter expert who owns gathering the issues and coming up with, coming up with solutions around these things. As you're training people, have somebody go to make sure everyone's there. But here's the thing: when we teach weekly meetings as coaches, we'll teach the leadership team, and then we'll attend, but we won't run that meeting, Michelle. It's like I'm auditing the meeting and giving you feedback, and that's a great way to do it, by the way, because now it's really, you've got to go do it. You're on the hook to go do it. But that's when I've trained the entire team. I would suggest when you get down to the department level that someone who's been through all the training and done it many times will actually lead the first meeting. So, and have somebody else whoever's going to take it over scribing, right? Following along. And then you flip those roles, right? But eventually you're going to find someone internally that you're going to watch do the meeting, give them notes, and you're off. You're gone. And you just want to, it's most important to transfer that knowledge, not for them to have a perfect meeting.
Yeah, and the integrator can also kind of monitor as they need to through meeting recaps. Some of the things they could look for are, frequent absences, or, the same person is out a lot, or maybe you spend 40 minutes on the scorecard. So maybe there's some issues there that need to be addressed, or you just need additional training on, IDSing at the IDS portion, not on the scorecard. So there's a lot that you can do without actually participating and being there live, but just kind of going back. Maybe it's something you do once a month, or even less frequently as the teams get better and better. But all of that information is available in the recap section. And the integrator is likely going to be an admin or owner on the account anyway, so they'll have visibility into all of that.
That's a great point. And if you are a coach and you have the implementer switch on in your account, you have that same visibility. And Michelle, I do that, a couple times a quarter. I will check in and look at all of the meeting scores of my clients and look for those 7.5s and things like that, or those timings that are really out of whack, and check in with them. And I get the emails letting me know that it's happened, and I monitor those to see where problems might arise. But like I say, having an approach to getting people up to speed on these things at the very beginning, but then handing off as fast as you possibly can and just giving them feedback. I think that's the encapsulated version.
Definitely. And then I mentioned it before, but don't forget that you don't have to be the trainer. Send them to us. We've got that covered. So if it's a technical thing that they just need more support on being more effective during the meeting, send them to us. Don't feel like you need to do that training yourself. Hopefully that covers that one.
Yeah.
Jim, Mark also would like to know if the integrator should rate at meeting.
No, I would think not. I mean, so as a coach, I don't rate the meetings that I'm running. I let everyone else rate them.
But at the leadership team level, they would, because they're part of that team. Yeah.
Part of that team. Yeah. If you're part of the team, then yeah, you should rate the meeting. And let's be really clear. The rating isn't a gotcha. It's about giving an opportunity for feedback. It is really that opportunity to be open and honest and vulnerable with the rest of the team. So if you're the integrator and you're attending a department quarterly, at the end of the meeting, yeah, you should give everybody feedback. You don't have to rate the meeting to give feedback. Give feedback. Say, hey, that was good. This we probably need some work on. Be specific and positive. What's the third one? The TSP. Anyway, TSP, something specific and positive.
I can't think of it.
I can't come up with it. Unfortunately, I know the acronym, but I can't come up with the names. But you're taking a coaching approach to helping people get better at the meeting. That is the whole point. And when we're rating meeting as a team, then it's really about us helping each other be better and better at that meeting. It's our rating as a team, not the the facilitator's rating.
Great. When should we use the cascade versus sending an issue to another team? So generally I see, and Jim, you can chime in, of course, but generally I see the cascading feature as more like sharing messaging. Like maybe there's a new policy that was just approved and it now needs to be shared throughout the organization. That's a great thing to cascade. It's probably going to start at the leadership team level and you'll cascade throughout the organization. Where sending an issue to another team is like, I really need this team to weigh in or approve or provide some direction on how we proceed. And then we'll take it back and kind of move forward. So that's generally how I see them used. Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, as a guide, you can think about issues as things that need to be just, clarified, discussed, and solved. And the solves are going to be a to-do, a long-term issue, a RAC, or a decision made. So if that's not the outcome you're looking for, then it's probably just a cascaded message. So if you don't expect someone to go actually do the work of a solve, then it's a cascading message. But if you need a solve from somebody, I mean, we do it we see it plenty where, like on our team for partnerships, there are things that, we would like to work with on marketing with. So we'll send them over to marketing. Hey, marketing, do you have to weigh in on this or should we just do it? And, it's for them to solve. They've got a specific solve they get to, they'll give some notes in there. It'll come back to us and now we know what to do. So it's a question asked as opposed to a message sent.
Yeah, very cool. See if we've got any more.
I think that's it.
Monica, thanks so much.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Monica.
Well, great. Do we have any more resources listed on our deck, Michelle?
I think we do.
Okay. Oh, yeah,
Maybe good, actually.
We have to pitch our, if there are any coaches out there, we do a coach office hours. When's the next
Yeah.
one, Michelle?
December 14th, the Tuesday, it'll be 5 p.m. Eastern. So we'll throw that in our follow-up email for any coaches that might be out there. It's going to be very similar. We'll go through features and updates, but we'll talk about it more from the coach perspective and how you can help your clients make more out of their subscriptions.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Great questions today. This will be available on YouTube soon. So you can share it as you need to. And Miss Monica, how many people asked for the resources to be sent to them? Was it a lot?
Yeah, a lot of them. Stephen said he would use the emails we have on the chat and also the ones that registered, and we will send all the resources. Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay, good. Thanks everybody. I mean, it's it'll be a day so I can get it packaged up exactly the way it should be. But I'll be excited to get your feedback on those. They're all in beta. So as you let me know what you think, because we're hoping that it helps people out in a place where there's not enough media right now. Okay. Michelle, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, hope I made Christine proud.
Yeah. Do we know what's going on with Christine and her baby?
Other than the baby's here, I don't know. The sex was a surprise, so I'm looking forward to catching up with her.
Well, if anyone asks about name, I'm going to say Zuzu. Zuzu.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you all so much for joining. Hope to see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Goodbye.